Hey everybody, welcome back to Cityscape Brewing. You know when I got all this stuff on the table, it's business time. That's right, we're doing another brew day. Today we're brewing a beer I like to call Uptown IPA. And so this is gonna be a really awesome summer IPA, and it's going to be one with a lot of different citrusy and delicious hops. It is not a hazy IPA. It is going to be a regular IPA, but it is going to have some of those citrus notes. We're gonna use Citra, we're gonna use Amarillo, we're gonna use Simcoe, we're gonna use Nugget hops and Centennial. And so we're gonna use a lot of different hop varieties, both in the boil process and in the dry hopping process. And we're gonna go through all of that today from start to finish and see how this thing turns out. I'm gonna quickly go through the recipe real quick. We're gonna get these grains milled up and we're gonna get after it. I am gonna be using a different yeast I haven't used before. I'm gonna be using Imperial's Independence yeast, which is A15. This is a kind of clean West Coast ale yeast. However, it does have a little bit more of those kind of citrusy aromatics and flavors that will really help shine those hops that we're gonna be adding in here as well. I haven't used this before, so this is gonna be a new trial for me. Heard some good things about it, but we're gonna give it a go. The reason it is open is I've started a starter for this. It is now cooled. We're gonna decant that off and we're gonna pitch that at the end of this video. For the grain bill, we are using 2-row Crystal 40, Simpsons Crystal Light, honey malt, and Pilsner malt. I'll have all of the amounts and percentages in the video description, so you don't need to write any of that down. The whole entire brew and recipe will be listed as always on my brew days in the video description, so you can brew this one yourself. And so we're gonna get these things milled up, we're gonna get our strike water heated, and we're gonna get this thing started. All right, we have hit our strike water temperature. I have added most of my water additions. I'm also gonna be adding some lactic acid based on my water profile. And so I'm gonna go ahead and add those first. It's important to get these in the water first before you mash in so they're evenly distributed in the mash. So go ahead and add that, add our lactic acid. Give that a good stir around. Same with the water additions. You wanna put those in before you mash in, so it's evenly distributed in the water. All right, get those all stirred around, make sure there's no dough balls. And then we'll get a temperature reading. We're shooting for a mash temperature in this one of 152 degrees. We are spot on at about 152, 151.8. Perfect. So we're gonna give this one last good stir, make sure I got everything on the bottom nice and stirred around. And then get the lid on this for a 60-minute mash rest. All right, guys, while we are waiting for our mash to get done doing its mash rest, we're going to start weighing out our hops for the boil. We have Nugget hops, we have Simcoe hops, we have Centennial, Citra, Amarillo, and Chinook, okay, in various times throughout the day today, and then also dry hopping. So first things first, we're gonna get our Nugget hops. Those are going to be our bittering hops. I use a dry vacuum sealer. If you haven't had one of these things and you buy in bulk or get some from friends, that kind of thing, this is a game changer. Just putting them in the freezer will expose them to air. This sucks up most of the air and it actually prevents the stuff in your freezer from smelling like hops. So get yourself a vacuum sealer if you haven't already. I just cut the corner off so then I can reseal it kind of in the same bag. So I'm gonna go ahead, open these up. We're gonna be using, it looks like a quarter or 3/4 of an ounce, so it's 0.75 ounces of Nugget for our bittering hops. Next, we are going to be doing several ounces at 5 minutes. We're going to do an ounce of Simcoe, an ounce of Centennial, an ounce of Citra whole leaf hops, and then half an ounce of Amarillo. I was gifted a whole pound of Citra whole leaf hops, so we'll be using those for our Citra hop edition, but if you have pellets, go ahead and use those. These smell so good. All right, so at this time, I'm also gonna be setting up my dry hopping additions. And what I do for that is I take my paint strainer bags, I dip these in sanitizer. So they're nice and sanitized, they're drying out a little bit right now. So I'm gonna go ahead and weigh out these hops and then put them in that paint strainer bag and then put them in a Ziploc bag, like sandwich bag, and put them in the freezer. That way when they're done and ready to go in, we can pull them out of the freezer. They're already in a sanitized paint strainer bag, and we will just throw them right in our fermenter so they can start doing their thing. I am also going to be adding a Flock tablet, which is like Irish moss that will help with clarity. We're gonna do that at 15 minutes. And I'm also gonna be adding in some yeast nutrient towards the end of the boil. I'm gonna be doing about a teaspoon of that. All right, our mash rest is almost done, so we're gonna go ahead and start our vorlofing process and recirculation process to get that grain bed built up and then collect our first runnings. I'm gonna go ahead and give this mash a good stir around. Then I use a recirculation tool that I built to help kind of disperse the wort as I pour this back in here. I have a video on how to do that. I'll have that in the link or the video description below. All right, so our mash is done draining. We got our first runnings, which would be about 2.75 gallons. We're just about that, maybe a touch over, but that's fine. We're gonna go ahead and add our sparge water for our batch sparge. This has our water additions already in it, and it's sitting at about 180 degrees. We're gonna go ahead and put this in, mix it around real good, and let it rest for 15 minutes. All right, give this a good stir around, get that grain bed all mixed back up. This is gonna help loosen up all those leftover sugars that are residual sugars that are just left over on the grains, and help rinse these things off, get as much efficiency as we can. So I say about 10-15 minutes is about optimal. Some people do a little bit longer, and that's really up to you. All right, if you haven't already, it's a good time to break out your yeast, whether you made a starter and decanted it like I did, getting this one all mixed up. Like again, it should be a nice good yeast slurry like this one on the bottom. If you are using a liquid yeast, pull that out, smack pack, make sure you break that and let it sit out and warming that up to room temperature. So I go by every once in a while, give this a good stir, and then check the bottom, make sure it's not all stuck on the bottom of this thing, and get those yeast activated again. All right, we're gonna do the exact same vorlofing process now that our sparge rest is done. We're gonna go ahead and recirculate just like we did, and we're gonna get our final runnings of about 7.2 gallons, and we'll be off to the boil. All right, guys, as this is approaching boiling, I've already added some firm cap that helps reduce or prevent boilovers, or when you add, or when you first get up to boiling and when you add hops right away. I'm not adding that many hops initially for the bittering hops, just about 3/4 of an ounce of Nugget, but I'm gonna use my hop spider because at the end I'm adding a ton of hops, and I don't want that to clog up at the very end of the boil, so I'm gonna be using my DIY hop spider. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna add that now just to get that in there, and we'll be ready for our Nugget hops once this gets up fully to a boil. If you wanna make a DIY hop spider like this, holds a ton of hops like we're gonna be using today, check out the video description. I'll have the link for that video in there as well. All right, we're going up to a boil, so I'm gonna go ahead and turn this down just a little bit. Make sure we don't boil too rapidly right away. All right, we got 3/4 of an ounce of Nugget going in. All right, as we get up to a good rolling boil like this, again, we're gonna set our timer for 60 minutes. We are gonna come back a little bit beforehand, about 15 minutes, add a Flock tablet, some yeast nutrient, and then all of the rest of our hops are at 5 minutes for this one. Again, gonna get all that good aroma, Citra, Simcoe, Chinook, all that stuff right at the end. Hopefully getting all those citrusy flavors for a good summer beer. All right guys, about 15 minutes left in the boil. We're gonna go ahead and throw in our Warflock tablet and just dump it in. It says to crush it up, but that thing will dissolve in like just a couple of seconds. And just give it a good stir around. No need to crush it up or anything. And that can go right in the beer. It doesn't have to go in your hop spider. That's gonna help settle out any solids and make your beer clearer at the end of the day. At the same time here, we're gonna add our yeast nutrient. It looks like this. I'm gonna add just about a teaspoon or so. It says 1 teaspoon per gallon. You don't need to do that much. All right guys, we are down to the last 5 minutes of our boil. We're gonna start adding our last hop additions, which are quite a lot of hops, right? So we got all of our Citra, Simcoe. I don't care if a few of these fall in there, but I'm gonna try to get as many as I can in the hop spider itself. These whole cone hops will be easy to kind of filter out. Pellet hops, not so much. A couple of them fall in the pot. That's not a huge deal at all. And we got a whole nother addition of pellet hops to go in there. Nice and stirred around, and then we're gonna lift up this bag a couple times, get all those oils out of there. That's what we're really working on. So again, it helps to lift up this bag, put the paddle right underneath it, get all those oils out of there. Do that a couple of different times. Get that back up to a nice vigorous boil, and then we're gonna be cooling this thing down, putting this bag right in our wort chiller, right in between there. Let that thing soak while we're cooling it down and pull all these hops out of there. We don't want them in our fermenter, but we want all those hop oils out. All right guys, that's gonna wrap up the Uptown IPA Brew Day. We have one thing left to do, and that is to get our refractometer reading to find out what our starting gravity is going to be. Original gravity says that our expected original gravity is 1.065, 1065. And wouldn't you know, we are spot on that. I am very happy with that. I actually boiled it at just a smidge longer because we actually collected a little more than 7.2 gallons. So I hit that final gravity perfectly, 10.65. So we pitched our yeast. We're gonna let that do its thing. We're gonna let that ferment fully out. Our first round of hops will be when that thing stabilizes out. We're gonna let that sit for a couple of days, then we're gonna second dry hop that thing about mid-second week or so for the last 3-4 days. And then we're going to pull all of those things, all of those hops out of there. We're gonna cold crash it, and we're gonna keg that. This is a fantastic beer. It's got a ton of really citrusy and delicious hops that your friends and family are gonna love. So go ahead and check this one out. Again, all of the stuff will be in the video description below. You won't have to write down a thing. It's all listed right there for you, the entire recipe and everything. As always, feel free to write comments, suggestions, questions, all that stuff in the comment section below. I love helping you guys out. Hit that like and subscribe button. Happy brewing, and cheers. Thanks for watching my video. I really do appreciate it. Another couple ways you can support the channel is by hitting that like and subscribe button, or by sending a super thanks underneath any of my videos. You can also check out the merchandise in our store and hit the video on the screen right now. You know you want to.